Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, Indiana looks to support its businesses while getting back on track. What effects have the pandemic and protesting had on downtown Indy? A West Lafayette restaurant changes the way it pays its servers. Could others follow? Racial unrest sparks change in Indianapolis schools. Ivy Tech offers free classes to help the unemployed. We spotlight Super Shot in Fort Wayne. And what will it look like as Hoosier high school athletes return to action? Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. Indiana has entered Stage 4 of its back-on-track reopening plan, with Stage 5 on the horizon on or before July 4th. Meantime, the state continues to extend financial support to Hoosier companies, especially small businesses and those in manufacturing. Indiana Economic Development Corporation Senior Vice President Luke Bossy joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick with a progress report.
I want to talk in a moment about that $10 million fund, plus another big pot of money that's out on the table there for Indiana companies. But first of all, to bring us up to speed, if you will, companies beginning to get back to work now around the state of Indiana. How would you assess the process and the progress in that back on track, get to work plan?
You know, Gary, I think it's been a rollout. Obviously, you know, we're in uncharted territory as a country when it comes to reopening, but businesses have been receptive and been willing to work with the state to get open. And all along, as Governor Holcomb has said, we want to get businesses open, but we want to do it safely, and we're doing a good job of that so far.
So many businesses around the state of Indiana, obviously around the country, have been hit very hard. Restaurants, the convention business, manufacturers, it runs the gamut. I think it's interesting to note that there are some programs that are being rolled out now at the state level where companies can access funding. First of all, $10 million targeting manufacturing. It's a three-pronged approach that includes entrepreneurial ventures, if you will, in manufacturing. But talk about that $10 million fund and how manufacturers can engage.
Yes, our Economic Activity Stabilization Enhancement Program, otherwise known as EASE. It's a program that we have been thinking of doing for quite some time, and then COVID hit, and we thought it'd be a great time to transition into it. For one, companies affected by COVID. Two, companies that were going to lack capital during COVID, and then three, companies who wanted to retool their manufacturing setup during COVID to make things such as PPE or medical equipment. So as you mentioned, $10 million set aside. $4 million set aside for companies that would like to retool with smart manufacturing or retool with retool to make PPE. We're really excited about this program. It launches next month on the application period. We also have $3 million set aside for smart manufacturing hubs. This will give companies access to capital to buy smart manufacturing equipment to put in their companies, and then also will allow access for businesses to have employees come in and train on it, so we can train our next level of manufacturers through the state. And then $3 million set aside for our venture-backed manufacturing companies who will be able to access capital during a time when we know it's been difficult for them to do so.
Yeah, when you talk about that smart manufacturing studio lab, I think that is an example of the focus on advanced manufacturing, technology, and innovation, and trying to really help some of those companies along.
Yes, as a state, we're manufacturing heavy, and we're proud of that. And we want to make sure that our companies, as we transition, to the next line of manufacturing, which we see as smart manufacturing. And we're excited about this program. We've got a lot of feedback and a lot of people calling and asking us about it and wanting to be involved. And we really think this will continue to take the state to the next level.
Want to touch on, too, something that I think hasn't gotten a lot of attention yet. That's a big pot of money, $35 million on the table for Restart grants. Talk about that and how companies, again, can get some of that action.
So as you mentioned, Restart program, $35 million, $5 million set aside for Marion County, $5 million set aside for minority and women-owned businesses. This is a complementary program to PPP for employers under 50. And, you know, one of the things, Gary, in rolling this out, we know that restaurants, retail, hospitality have really been hit hard. So we wanted to make sure not only do we have a program that touches on every industry, but also one that specifically focuses on those small businesses so they have access access to capital. We want as many people to apply as possible. It's up to $10,000 per employer for the grant program, and it is just a grant. Now, we also do encourage people to continue to look at the paycheck protection program at the federal level, as there is more than $100 billion still left in that. But as a state, we wanted to make sure we're getting capital to businesses as quickly as possible to make sure they can reopen safely and reopen in this economy.
Luke, before we leave, I want to ask you about the business of economic development during the COVID pandemic, how things are going both here in this country and internationally. There's been a lot of action, a lot of companies internationally announcing plans to invest in Indiana. What's the status of economic development as we're hopefully beginning to come out of the pandemic?
It's been interesting for all of us. Nobody's ever been through a pandemic like this. But at the IEDC, we feel really good about the prospects coming out of this. We've been able to land an economic development deal every week during COVID. So we know that the business community still feels strongly about Indiana, still feels strongly about investment and expansion opportunities they have within the state. And while we've seen internationally, there's been issues with the supply chain and issues with other things. We know that companies are still calling Indiana. They want to be here. Our tax environment is friendly. And as we've seen, our ability to be able to have a rainy day fund in this state has really excited businesses throughout the country and throughout the world. And it's one of the reasons why they continue to call Indiana, because through all of this, we'll still be in good financial shape. All
right. Luke Basso, Chief of Staff at the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. A lot of money out there for Indiana businesses. Luke, thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Gary.
The latest report on the state of downtown Indianapolis is out, and it shows the economic impact that COVID-19 and recent protests have had on businesses in the heart of the city. How are stakeholders working to return the business climate to normal? Downtown Indy Inc. President Sherry Seiwert joined us with some answers.
All right, as we look at the state of downtown, we're going to talk about the challenges with COVID, the social unrest that certainly has impacted downtown. But to put some perspective on the state of downtown heading in pre-pandemic, before things went crazy, if you will, what was the state of downtown in terms of jobs and residential development, conventions, those types of things heading pre-pandemic?
Sure. Every year we put together a community report, and it provides indicators of how downtown is performing. And if you look at the report that we just released for 2019, you'll see a fantastic picture of highest number of employees that we've seen, residential living. We topped out at almost 30,000 people, residents living in the downtown area. The occupancy rate in our office towers is as high as it's been in decades. The visitor numbers are more significant than we've ever seen, and an explosion of hotel room, new development for hotel rooms in downtown. So, it paints a very strong, very vibrant picture of 2019, what downtown was right before COVID hit.
Okay, now the pandemic hits, obviously. Businesses are closed, restaurants, no conventions essentially in downtown Indianapolis. Without that flow of traffic downtown, what has that meant to the vibrancy that was downtown?
For those who have not returned to downtown, it is a stark difference from what existed in 2019. There are very, very few people out on the street, so we're not seeing that pedestrian traffic. Our workforce has not returned to downtown, certainly, as well as the visitors are non-existent, unfortunately. So, we have a very, very small group of employees currently working, as well as our wonderful downtown residents. But in addition to that, with the impact of the riots, you'll see a lot of boards on all of the buildings in the downtown area. And so we're encouraging property owners currently now to take those boards down if they can. And we're really encouraging people to go and support those existing retailers that are currently open.
Yeah, and Sherry, you mentioned the social unrest and the visual there. That is certainly a challenge. As you look going forward, stabilizing business in downtown Indianapolis and issues like affordability, safety, security, homelessness, livability, those types of things that were on the table before, now you're looking at them through a different lens. You
bet. So pre-COVID, we were looking at 5 different issues that impact downtown, which are homelessness, safety and security, affordability, the livability of downtown, and curb management. And as our committees were having discussions related to those issues and getting ready to roll out recommendations, we now want to take another closer look at all of those issues with a COVID lens, as well as a social equality, and making sure that we're being sensitive to the issues that every city in the country is facing right now as it relates to race and equality.
Sherry Syward is the president of Downtown Indy, Inc. Sherry, always great to see you. Thanks for this update on the state of downtown. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks so much.
Fort Wayne-based Do It Best has been profoundly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic in a positive way. The company was recently featured in the Wall Street Journal for how it's using innovative technology to meet unprecedented demand. Vice President of Logistics Tim Miller joined us with details.
For those who don't know, Do It Best is one of the largest private sector employer in the state of Indiana. As I mentioned, the second largest hardware co-op in the country, largest privately owned co-op as well. Headquartered in Fort Wayne, you have been impacted, many in a negative way. You've been impacted in a big way in terms of a surge of sales through the pandemic. Kind of walk us through that, Tim, and what demand has been like.
Sure has. Thank you, Gary. The home improvement industry has seen a historic surge in demand since the onset of COVID. During the quarantine, every day has been a Saturday, and Saturdays are big days in hardware and home improvement for our retailers. Yeah. We've experienced double-digit sales increases March and April, and those are typically strong months for us. Our May sales for brick and mortar were up 50%. Our online e-commerce fulfillment was up over 150%. And that just is continuing all the way through June.
Tim, talk about the type of demand and the pressure that puts on the supply chain system.
Sure. The increase in sales have been in paint, lawn and garden, outdoor living, general hardware. They've all experienced record sales. And then you layer on top of that just the increase in COVID-related products like sanitizers, disinfectants, gloves, masks. Sales in some of those categories, for example, our hand sanitizer sales, we've sold more than a 40-year supply in just the last couple of months. Isopropyl alcohol is up over 500%. We've sold infrared thermometers, hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's a category that we've never even stocked until very recently. So just trying to keep up with that demand has been a challenge. We've added routes all over the United States. In May alone, we've added over 800 additional routes to our 3,800 stores across the United States. And I just couldn't be more proud of the team and how they've been responding.
We'll talk about how you handled this from a strategic standpoint and a business continuation standpoint. The Wall Street Journal, among others, have taken note of the plans you had in place. This is before the pandemic, but utilizing innovation, technology, and partnerships to make things happen.
Yeah, well, thank you. And we've had a long history of success. This is our 75th anniversary, and that success isn't just during the normal times. It's when we have these all hands on deck moments, and this has certainly been one of those. One of the very first things we did back in early March, when this all starting to play out, was we initiated our business continuity plan. We assemble that team a couple times a year, but it's usually in response to a localized disaster. Like a blizzard or a hurricane, something along those lines. And our key objective has always been to continue to provide our store owners with an uninterrupted supply of merchandise. So we immediately sprang into action, worked on our supply chain. We placed very large orders of speculative goods ahead of many of our competitors. We locked in alternative supplies, suppliers and vendors, and then we worked with our store owners to identify what they thought they would need in the weeks and months ahead. So just been a tremendous team effort across the entire network.
Tim Miller is the Vice President of Logistics at Do It Best, based in Fort Wayne. I should mention, too, Do It Best will be an anchor tenant of that dramatic electric works project that is unfolding in downtown Fort Wayne. So, again, another contribution Do It Best making to Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana. Tim, thanks for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary.
All right.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business on television stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. The pandemic may end up changing the way service industry workers are paid. The Pint in West Lafayette is moving away from the tip wage structure and instituting $15 per hour pay for staff. Around Indiana reporter Mary Rachel Redmond went to Tippecanoe County to get details.
Thank you, guys. Whenever you're ready.
Mr. and Mrs. Axford, allow me. How much should we tip?
In a perfect world, nothing.
We've all been there. You get the check and debate, how much should I tip? Well, one craft brewery owner in West Lafayette is taking that factor out of the equation.
In the service industry, everybody in the room is your boss. And that's a really tough thing to deal with because we rely on customers to make up the entire wage for the people that work for us. And unfortunately, that means that one bad day, a few bad tables, is the difference between putting food on your table or paying rent.
So Hagmeyer decided to move away from a tip wage system like most service industry jobs and instead pay his staff $15 an hour.
Indiana follows national minimum wage for a tip wage, which is $2.13 an hour. It's not enough for people to live off of. And for our particular part of the country, $15 an hour is considered at this point a decent living minimum wage for our cost of living. Now, in reality, were a lot of people making that amount of money in the first place off of tips? Yes, a lot of people were, but not everybody was. What we can't do is focus on keeping the good shifts to be really good and have the bad shifts be really bad, and every week sacrifice somebody for the bad shifts. And if it takes people having to pay a little bit more for it, and it takes us having a little bit of a hit on the profitability end, that's worth it to better the lives of our employees.
The no tipping change will make a huge difference in the lives of Hagmeyer's employees, but for the customer, the only difference is $1 extra per pint.
The other part of it is just going to come out of my pocket. That comes out of the cost of doing business. The hope is that this is something that the community gets behind and that they see us supporting our employees, and then that helps make up that difference. But otherwise, I'm just committed to doing it myself.
And his employees couldn't be more thankful.
It definitely makes me want to put more effort into everything that I do. Showing that I am appreciated in this job definitely makes me want to put my best foot forward.
People don't understand that people are making $2-3 an hour, and tips just aren't enough to pay bills, especially whether you're an adult or you're a college kid. I only hope that it puts the pressure on other employers and bosses and people that run businesses like this to step up and start caring for their workers like he has.
Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
The 11 Marion County school districts in Indianapolis are responding to racial unrest in the city with a plan to promote diversity and racial equality. MSD Wayne Township Superintendent Jeff Butts and MSD Lawrence Township Superintendent Sean Smith joined us with more in our Eye on Education segment.
Sean, I'll start with you. 11 superintendents, the two of you, 9 additional superintendents, all together very quickly on this plan. As we were talking off camera, it's tough for you all to get together on any number of issues, but on this one, you seem to coalesce very quickly.
Absolutely. This is a topic that will be near and dear to the hearts of all educators as we every day educate young people to become great citizens. And so it was very easy for us as superintendents to come together and to say, in our school corporations, we're going to make every effort to make this go away.
Dr. Butts, in Wayne Township, I know you echo what Sean Smith said there as well. And I know that both of you agree this is about in classroom, but just as importantly, about extending out into the broader community.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary. You know, we are going to be pushing hard to make there are no racism zones inside of our schoolhouses and in our school facilities. But our goal here is to make sure that we are able to take what we're doing inside the schoolhouse, move it out into our communities, and truly transcend across all of Indianapolis.
Talk about, if you would, and I'll start with you, Dr. Butts, in terms of some of the elements of this campaign. There's going to be signage, a number of things that are going to be part of the campaign.
Sure. What we're doing is building on ongoing work that each one of our districts have had over the years in the space of equity. But of course, the recent incidents that have occurred over the last several years have really drawn us to join together, all 11 school corporations in Marion County, to do some very specific things to start off with and to show people that this is a united campaign. You mentioned the signage. Those will be located as they enter the campuses of our buildings. We will be lighting up our football fields here soon to recognize George Floyd and also some of the events around Juneteenth. And then we have been sharing some resource information with our families. We know that they're out of the schoolhouse now, but to begin those conversations happening at home with their parents, giving them some resources that they can access.
Yeah, and Dr. Smith, I know Jeff mentioned lighting up the football fields. I think there's going to be some video in Lawrence Township on Friday evening. For some, it'll be right after the show airs. For some, it'll be before it airs, since we are at different times over the weekend. But there'll be a focus there on Friday evening that is important.
Absolutely. Our two high schools will participate, as well as all the high schools throughout Marion County are going to participate in this initiative. And it's just symbolism. It's just, we want to recognize the issue at hand. And at the moment in time, we will be able to do that Friday evening.
Dr. Smith, well, I'll start with you on this one. In your view, what is going to be critical to making this initiative work, both in the classroom and in the community, and not just a one-time temporary fix, but something that has staying power, that's long-lasting?
I'm honored to speak to that. I think that's the critical piece. As school corporations, we are very important entities as a part of the community. We're very large operations. Dr. Butts and I lead school districts that have over 16,000 students and a couple thousand employees. So we have a tremendous amount of power and voice to bring about change in our community. So deeper than that is that we're governed by boards of education. I think the community are going to see boards begin to pass policy and action steps to bring about and into racism and equity in our communities. And so I think that's going to be the major thing that you will see over the next year. Yeah,
it's interesting. You bring up passing policies as well. Dr. Butts, how about you? In terms of what you feel is really important to making this initiative a success?
Well, I think a critical piece of this are engaging in the the conversations that we're having with individuals across our community. These courageous conversations are not easy for people, and we've already begun to see some people that are sharing some of their concerns, their biases, some of the perspectives that they come to us with, and that's really what this is about. We have to identify where those biases exist and where that systemic racism continues to be pervasive in the procedures and policies and practices that we have going on in our schoolhouses and around our community. And until we are courageous enough to identify those and begin to address those, we're not going to change anything. We're going to continue to perpetuate all of this racism and bigotry that has occurred over the last 400 years in our country. And so we've decided as Marion County School Districts, we're going to lead this effort. We are going to be very intentional about it, and we're not going to continue to, as you say, let this be a one-time thing. This is ongoing, and this is going to carry us well into the future.
11 superintendents in Marion County getting together on an anti-racism campaign, something with impact in the broader community, including the business community as well. Dr. Jeff Butts from Wayne Township, Dr. Sean Smith, Lawrence Township. Thank you both for joining us. Good luck with the campaign.
Ivy Tech Community College is offering free classes and training for Hoosiers dealing with unemployment, reduced hours, or furloughs as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The college says courses will cover high-demand areas like cybersecurity and advanced manufacturing. Ivy Tech President Sue Elsperman joined us with details.
This is a major initiative, 10,000 free online classes. How did this come about, the decision to do this, and why do it?
Well, it came up as an idea back in late March as our team was saying, hey, this is incredible as we were watching Indiana's unemployment grow, and how do we help? Remember, Ivy Tech Community College, we're here to do two things. We're here to help our employers have the workforce they need, and we're here to help scale up Hoosiers into prosperity. So we said, what if we could do 10,000 free classes? Now, we had no idea how we would do that, but we went out and started asking our partners out there to help us. And before you know it, we had people like Paul Perkins and Amatrol, an Indiana-based company, say, hey, we'll give you for free an unlimited number of Industry 4.0 SACA Silver certifications. These are for the smart factory of the future, the jobs that every employer wants their employees to have, these skills. And so off we have gone. And then we had AWS with the cloud and cyber security, as you mentioned, and LinkedIn Learning's work, their materials. And so we are off and running. Over 6,000 enrolled already, Gary.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. The demand is obviously there. You mentioned 6,000 already enrolled. That number will change, obviously, dramatically. And it's really the bottom line is during or coming out of the pandemic, no question, individuals are going to need additional skills, new skills to compete in that post-pandemic economy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to support, we know that Indiana's a manufacturing state. We want manufacturing to be strong coming out of this pandemic. And so having these Industry 4.0 skills are critically important. We know IT is growing. Cybersecurity, the cloud, these are skills, credentials that are high value, central Indiana and across the state. And likewise, all those business skills are going to be skills that are needed out there. So we want to be part of the solution. That's what Ivy Tech's here to do. And in this way, we can help people get that step up back into their job and be even stronger or get an even better job.
And again, you really don't have to have any prerequisites to get these classes. How do folks engage or connect with the program?
So really, really easy. So yes, you don't have to do a financial aid form. You don't have to meet any particular criteria. Just get on Ivy Tech's website. You can put 10K classes, or you can put rapid recovery in, and you'll find the page. And it is literally a click away, all online. So you don't have to come into campus. These are online courses, and you can get started so easy. And look, you're not limited to one. Try a couple of them. It is a way to put your toe in the water and start skilling up, and we want to make it as easy as possible. And by the way, 10,000 is not the limit. With good partners like Amatrol out there, they've committed through the end of July. So we will continue to add courses through the end of the summer. We encourage people to, if you didn't see what you like this week, come check next week. There may be something new on there, but it's not too good to be true. It really is true.
Yep.
And we hope that Hoosiers will take us up on it.
All right. A major initiative at Ivy Tech Community College, 10,000 free online classes targeting people impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Sue Ellspermann, the president at Ivy Tech, thanks as always for joining us. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Gary, thanks for what you're doing, and we'll keep working here at Ivy Tech. Keep moving Indiana's economy ahead.
SuperShot in Fort Wayne is a grassroots immunization program that was formed to combat a previous measles epidemic in Allen County. Its mission is to promote vaccinations and provide community-wide immunizations. Executive Director Connie Heflin joined Kylie Valletta in the business of health.
First, I want to talk about how SuperShot came to be, because it really is a unique story. It's backed by a lot of support now from local healthcare. But tell us how it got its start during the measles outbreak in the early 90s.
Yeah, you're right. SuperShot is unique to Allen County. We were founded by two very strong women in the early 90s as a response to the measles outbreak. Back in the 1990, just in that year alone, there were 27,000 cases of measles in the United States. And Dr. Jane Ermshire, the local health commissioner at the time, and Sister Mary Conrad, a poor handmaid, said, Allen County, we really need to do something about our low immunization rates and protect kids specifically against measles. So at that point, those two women brought community leaders together and created what was called a SuperShot Saturday. And any child could come and get their immunizations at no charge, and they would line up for blocks down the street. And from there, that initiative, SuperShot, as a nonprofit, evolved, and we're here over 27 years later.
Such a strong presence there in Northeast Indiana. Let's talk about these recent vaccination numbers as a result of COVID, especially looking at May. The State Department of Health says nearly half of all Hoosier children did not get their required vaccinations during that month. So give us a look inside why that drop happened, is happening, and also your message right now as SuperShot tries to build those numbers back up.
Right, exactly. Those numbers are alarming, and it puts our children at risk for vaccine preventable diseases. And as a community, we need to come together and really create that awareness. But the reason it happened, it boils down to access and fear. During the stay-at-home orders during March, April, parents didn't have a place to take their kids. A lot of doctors moved to telehealth. Departments of health moved to focus on COVID, and there wasn't a lot of access points. SuperShot, we did remain open. We temporarily took over the immunization services of the Allen County Department of Health, but then it came to fear. Parents were very frightened to bring their children out during those stay-at-home orders. So now, it's not behind us, but we really have to encourage parents that procedures are in place where we can provide immunizations safely. We've got social distancing, checking temperature screening, and now we need to get children back on track so they're not at risk for a vaccine preventable disease.
And I definitely want to talk about the flu vaccine. The CDC is saying that's critically important this season so you don't have the extra burden of the flu on top of already another respiratory issue with COVID. So explain sort of your message surrounding the flu vaccine this fall.
Correct. You nailed it there. We really need families to start thinking ahead that they're going to plan to get their flu shot this year. It's so important this year so we don't stress our health systems with both COVID and flu cases. And so SuperShot here locally in Allen County, we're really working and partnering with the local schools to do in-school flu immunization clinics to further break down those barriers, take the flu shot to the schools, make it convenient for families, but really, really trying to encourage families, all members of our community. If you don't get your flu shot typically, this is the year to get it. Get your flu shot.
And back to the routine vaccinations, you pointed out that Indiana schools will not be easing their vaccination requirements at all this school year. And also the Indiana High School Athletic Association is not requiring student athletes to get new physicals this year. Explain how that could be an issue too.
Yeah, that is an issue because that sports physical visit really drives a lot of immunizations for adolescents. That's when their doctor catches them and keeps them up to date. And now that those sports physicals aren't being required, we're really concerned about adolescents falling behind on their immunizations. We've seen that trend already, and we really need parents to make an effort, get into their doctor. If you're in Allen County or surroundings area, come to SuperShot. People can come and get those immunizations. So don't just forego the adolescent immunizations because you're not getting your sports physical.
All right. Well, I know you're working hard up there in Northeast Indiana, but really good information for the entire state. Connie, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you again for having us. I appreciate it.
And finally this week, Hoosier high school athletes will soon be back in action as fall workouts are scheduled to begin July 6. The pandemic knocked out the entire spring sports season and has drastically altered how teams will move forward. Incoming IHSAA Commissioner Paul Neidig joined Inside Indiana Sports.
We want to talk about getting back on the field in a moment. But first, a little bit of your background. You've been at the IHSAA for, I think, 2 or 3 years. But prior to that, a long and very storied career in high school athletics in the Evansville-Vanderburg school system. Talk, Paul, a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I've had a great career. I've been blessed to have an opportunity to do a lot of things in education. I first and foremost, and still today, I consider myself a teacher. I was able to start in the classroom and love teaching, love helping kids find their way and watching them learn and grow has always been a passion of mine. And I was able at some point to turn that into the athletic field through coaching and then through athletic administration. And, I was the athletic director at Evansville Central High School. And I've often said I think back on that time with very fond memories, and I know I will for the rest of my career, because I think you're really making a difference for kids in that role. But then had an opportunity to move into central office administration, oversaw district athletics. So we had 5 high schools and middle school programs and some elementary programs. And ultimately, I was able to serve Dr. David Smith and the school board in Evansville as chief of staff. And so, I've seen the entire gamut of education in a school system. From a perspective of an individual school and then from a district perspective also.
Yep. Paul, in a nutshell, we're going to talk about the COVID-19 dynamic in a moment, but in a nutshell, what is your vision for the IHSAA as you begin this new role?
Well, I think my vision really is contained in what I'm concerned about moving forward. And, we're an education-based entity. If education doesn't happen, we don't have sports. And that we need to keep that first and foremost. And my guiding principle, my decision making, the thing that I always want to be responsible to is the last kid who makes a team. The 1%, the great athletes, they have a lot of opportunities, but I really want to be focused on protecting the experience for all kids who make a team, because this is an educational setting. And if we're not teaching, we're not probably doing a service to kids. So that's my primary focus.
Okay, Paul, this is on the minds of many people in the state, fans, parents, and of course, student athletes. But getting back in the game, if you will, I know the Indiana State Department of Education has issued basically a 3-phased approach when it comes to sports. Can you kind of give us a nutshell of that plan and where things are at this point?
Sure. We've been able to work collaboratively with the Department of Education and obviously the governor's office and entities charged with opening back up our state. But the plan is we return to our school-based facilities on July 6th. Our coaches can get access to our student athletes. They can what we'll call it knocking the dust off here. And there's a 2-week acclimation period we call phase 1 that coaches can work with their kids, start lifting weights again, conditioning, getting the tools of trade back out, the balls and the pads. And then after that, we move into phase 2. Phase 2 will be a little bit more of a return to normal summer where we can start some informal competitions. Obviously, it's with essential personnel only during phase 2. And that takes us to phase 3. And phase 3 is going to be the return of high school sports as we've known on the same timeline as we've always had. And our hope is if we continue on this path and something doesn't change, that we're going to return to the football field on Friday night this fall, just like we have every other year, or the soccer or tennis or golf or what have you. And we're going to start competing again, and we're going to start giving our kids a platform to learn and show what they do. Very good. Very quickly, Paul, we only have about 20 seconds left. I know you can't answer this in totality, but at this point in the game and in that progression, how confident are you that you can stick to that timeline and high school sports can begin on schedule? I think I'm very confident in that, but I would also say we need to remain nimble. This COVID is a new path for us. We don't know all the ins and outs of it yet, but I'm confident that we're going to return to the field in the fall. Paul Neidig is the incoming commissioner at the Indiana High School Athletic Association. Paul, thanks for joining us. Good luck in your new role. I know we'll talk to you many times, hopefully in the future as well. Very good. I appreciate everything you guys do, and let's get back on the field here. I hear you. Very good. Thanks, Paul.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state, at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.